Hello, welcome to Sailing Hawkeye. My name is Paul Dunbar. Today I'm going to have a quick chat about a sandblaster that I just built. I did a previous video on the trial. I did record just about every single step of the process in making it, so a few people have sort of said yeah they'd be interested in looking at how I went about making it, so I'm just putting the video up now, making the video now. Let's have a bit of a chat about Hawkeye though. I bought Hawkeye a little over 3 years ago from an insurance auction. I spent 8 weeks fixing her up. She was in a pretty bad mess because she'd laid on the bottom of Sydney Harbour, was refloated, and I bought it as a floating hull with a good set of sails. I put an engine in it while it was on its mooring, and then I motor sailed it up from Sydney to Newcastle, where it is at the moment. I spent the next 3 years just straightening up the electrics, putting a brand new engine in it, new windlass, new rigging, new electronics. That included replacing all the wiring. So yeah, so quite extensive. Anyway, that's the story behind Hawkeye and what Hawkeye's about. I was going to make a YouTube channel of it, but I just wanted to get the boat up and running, and making YouTube videos takes up a lot of time. Anyway, without any further wait, I'm just going to hook right into making the Sandblaster. I'll probably do it over 2 videos, I'd say. There was quite a lot of video footage I shot of it. Just trying to get it right. First time shooting movies, so yeah, just trying to make sure the shots are right, trying to make sure what I'm saying is right, making sure you guys can hear it from the wind, so on and so forth. So a lot of learning curves. The biggest one I was learning about was lighting, just how important it is. It's quite difficult to get lighting correct. In fact, right now at the moment I can guarantee my face covered in shadows. So yeah, anyway, I'll get on with it. Thanks.
Hey guys, my name's Paul. Today I'm going to turn this old pressure vessel into a sandblaster, but not just any sandblaster. I'm going to make a wet blaster. If any of you want to have a look, go and check out SV Seeker, and you'll see how Doug Jackson has made one very similar. Only difference is I'm going to try and make this one wet instead of having wet with the air. So we'll see how we go. So the first thing we have to do is we have to make a cut in the top here so that we can get our sand in. Needs to be a fairly large size inspection plate because the sand that I'm going to put in is basically fairly wet. So what I'll have to do is make the hole large enough, and I'll also have to make the disc that I put in behind it large enough so that it can twist or move, so that when the sand goes in, basically it'll be free flowing. And then the same underneath here. So underneath I'm going to end up having a 1-inch valve coming out the bottom into a cross. So the cross will go like that. I'll have water feeding through on one side. That'll push it along the hose coming out, and then going here I'll have a 1-inch ball valve, and then up here on the bottom I'm going to have a jet, and that jet is going to spray water straight up into here. I'm going to try and finish it about here somewhere to start with, and then I'll just keep extending it as need be, just to keep the bottom of the sand flowing. That's about it for that bit. So what I've done so far is I've cut up these rings. I'll put another video in there in a second of me cutting them.
This is the pressure washer we're using. It's a twin cylinder air-cooled diesel, giving off around about, I think, 15 horsepower. It is 200 bar, which is pretty close to 3000 psi. So quite a beefy little machine. I know when I'm washing something down, I hate hanging onto it. Eventually I'm going to modify this further. At the moment it's belt drive. I want to turn it into shaft drive and put a coupling in there. Just try and make it a little bit more compact. I've got some other work to do to it too. The charging system doesn't work on it. I actually pulled this machine out of the scrap and it was full of water. I drained it, filled it with oil, ran it, drained it, filled it with oil, and got it going. Probably took me about 2 or 3 hours, so it was a pretty good find really. Just never know what comes in the scrap. What I'm doing now, I'm taking my ring, I'm going to trace around it
on this piece of steel, and then I'm going to cut out the shape, and that's going to make my backing plate. So basically what you do, actually I've got an example that I'll show you. There's a plate inside here, it's held up by this nut and this clamp on the outside to pull the force up to hold the plate against that seal. These ones are air rated, they basically would just be a machined surface, so I'm not going to that extreme. So she fits through that way, she won't fit that way. So now it's fizzing time. We're going to put our little ring into the top. And we're going to run some roller around it. The wall of the air tank's quite thin, so what I'm going to do, I'm just going to wind the amps right down to about 19, oh sorry, the volts right down to about 19 volts, and I'll favour this material. It's 10 mil thick, so that's only about 3.
Because I wear multifocal glasses, it can be difficult to weld. I have to look through the very base of my glass to be able to focus close up. Makes it really, really difficult when you're welding, because you want to look straight ahead. So what I do try to do though is I try to wear reading glasses, which will let me look through the middle of the face shield. A lot of the time I forget where I've put the glasses though.
Just give you a close-up of what I've just done there. So if you look here, I just ground my stop-start. So that's where I started the weld. So I've just grounded so that when I move my way through, it'll feather up onto that. I'm going to start here, but that was the end of another weld. So I'm just going to start and continue on. That way I can be pretty sure that it's not going to crack out underneath there. Not the best weld, but it'll do. There you have it. There's our little oval put in place. So now turning that way, put him in, lift him up. This one will have some flat bars in here. As I said, it's going to be held up with a spring. So it'll have a flat bar coming up here, like that. Same with there. So when it lifts up into the hole, it'll guide up flat. I'll have a pivot point here. Sorry. I'll have a pivot point about here, and a lever coming off it with a spring weight. Okay, so now we're going to flip this baby over, and we're going to repeat the process on the other side. All I'm doing here is just taking the paint off because I'm using oxy. If I was using a plasma, I would have just traced around that with a black pen, and basically I could have been able to cut straight through it. But because I'm using oxy, it's got paint on it. As I start cutting, the line's going to burn away. I won't be able to see where I'm going. And the other reason for that is it'll have to heat the paint up before it actually heats the metal, so I won't get as clean a cut. This one's a little bit different to the top. So the top I made sit down inside more, whereas this one I wanted to have it come out more so that the sand doesn't get caught on the lip as it comes out. Otherwise it'll just build up, which probably isn't a bad thing because it'll probably save it wearing on the inside, but I don't really think the sand's going to wear that much anyway because it is wet and it's not being pushed through very fast. I might just give that well a grind and clean up. I have to go over it again. Just nearly put together. It just looks like the end of it a little bit cold and hasn't melted onto the previous weld. Did get it, but it's always safe. Better to be safe than sorry. I'd hate for it to develop a little buoy out of there. Put more water where it's not needed. I'm using it. Fucking drop me again. Yep, that looks a lot better. So this plate, of course, is going to go in there. What he's going to have, he's just going to have a hole in the middle with a 1-inch socket coming out of it, and then a ball valve, and then some other jewellery to it. Correct way up, or the right way up, whatever you think. You can see underneath that, go in focus, you bugger. You can see underneath that, you can see why I was having so much trouble cutting it. You can see all the flaky bits of rust that are there. So as the heat was coming in, the oxygen was hitting it, the oxygen blast down the centre of the torch and it was blowing back up and it was blowing out. So anyway, not perfect, but it'll do. That's the end of part 1. In part 2 I'll be putting all the plumbing on and making the hardware for the sand port and the bottom inspection plate. Until then, see ya.